All right, you're good to go.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for being here with me here in person. Before we get completely started here, I'd like thankful for the work I'm on. There was once a rabbi in the Talmud that always started his discussion with a joke. So this is a very, very serious topic. I'm going to tell a joke that many of you have probably. In Germany in 1935, there was a Jewish student at a cafe in Germany. He was out of the ordinary because he was actually reading Der Stürmer, which was a neo-Nazi, oh, not a neo-Nazi at the time, it was just a Nazi propaganda magazine. And everyone was staring at him. It was very odd. He was very, very outwardly Jewish. So a man walked up to him and said, "Why are you reading this fascist Nazi magazine? Are you crazy? Are you self-hating?" And he says, "Well, in all the other magazines and newspapers, I have to read about, all my people getting killed in pogroms and in these raids and about all these other awful, awful things. But on this one, we control the government, the weather, and we control the banks. We can have anything we want." And while this is, of course, a way that human situation, how crazy some of this stuff really is, unfortunately, even today, that's what some people actually think and somewhat believe. But remember, it's not always the ideas that necessarily are bad, but it's the way they're transmitted and gotten so big that makes them so threatening in the first place. After all, if it wasn't for the big expansion of Nazism in Germany, maybe it wouldn't have been such a big threat after all here. So, if you can see in the 21st century, it was actually the internet that actually helped this big expansion to really grow into the mainstream. And as we can see in the next slide, if you will, Sam, this actually exploded in Charlottesville, if you remember, in 2017. And if you don't remember, you've been not having a lot of news lately, I'll go ahead and we'll watch some what happened in Charlottesville, August in Charlottesville of 2017. And we're going to make sure that everyone sees this, so this will just take a second here.
Yeah, okay. Give me 1 second while we work on the technology. Okay. Now there is closed captioning on this, so that's good.
Every lesbian clergy member in America in one place.
I think we get the idea now. So the question that I kind of want to ask here is, how did we get here? How did suddenly, somehow, out of the blue in many people's eyes, did the neo-Nazi and white supremacist movement grow so much, so quickly? Because we had never seen anything like this, such as a neo-Nazi event or protest in such large numbers in years. Ever since Madison Square Garden, I believe it was, and I believe it was 1937 or 1936, 20,000 neo-Nazis in New York City appeared all the way back in the 30s before really World War II began. But since then, this has been one of the largest on American soil. So again, I'll pose the question, how did this happen? And the answer I think it is personally, I think it's actually the rise of the internet. So can we go to the next slide? So if we want to talk about how this started, we actually have to go back really to the beginnings of the internet and the early internets and how this was able to form so easily. Because if we're able to understand the internet and how it functions, we're actually able to understand how easily this was able to grow and manifest, especially in American spaces. So if you remember in the 90s, that was really when the internet took off globally with dial-up internet, which we all know the horrible sounds of with our phone modem, with our phones and modems, and God help us all. But the early internet really relied on things such as chat rooms, such as AOL, which you would basically be paired up with another person and you can talk to random people online. And so people started to get to know each other and kind of find where they fit in places that weren't necessarily places they fit in their normal lives. And again, this would also continue on from the 90s into the mid and early 2000s. And we can see these same kind of ideas of websites popping up with websites such as 4chan, Reddit, and Tumblr. These are called chat boards and chat room websites based off of connecting yourself with other people based off of what you're interested in. And sometimes those interests weren't necessarily movies, but hating other people or some other not so good things. And the main thing about these three websites, although Tumblr wasn't as big with neo-Nazis or white supremacists in terms of comparing them to 4chan or Reddit, the thing about these three sites is that it was focused on anonymity. You could go in there and you never had to release your name or any of your personal information to the site itself or to anything to actually create an account. So you could make yourself a complete blank slate. You do not have to release anything about yourself to create an account. So because of the anonymity, and this is actually proven a lot with psychology and psychiatry, that when you are anonymous, you're more likely to do things you will not do when you are not anonymous. This goes back to many other things, such as the Milgram experiments with the electroshocks and whatnot, which, if you want to go into that, it's actually really interesting. I highly suggest you do. Be completely unethical today, so don't actually do it. But because of this anonymity, more people start to say really questionable and hateful things on the internet because, well, you have no repercussions. No one's going to know who you are, so it's not going to matter. You know, jobs can't find you because you don't put your email when you put your login information in. So you can just say whatever you want. So because of that, groups of these people who thought similar ideas would kind of cling to each other and find each other very, very easily. And this is also because 4chan and Reddit and Tumblr would have Reddit. They have something called subreddits, which is basically websites that branch off of Reddit that is based off of a certain subgenre, such as movies or video games or whatever you may think. And within those subgenres or subreddits, there would be other people that would be connected to other subreddits. So you become friends with them and then go on to other sites, and ideas would be spread very easily. So because of the anonymous chat rooms, and because you didn't have to worry about any repercussions from them, they would meet other people like them because of the hateful things they were saying and because of the other ideas that they were spreading. And so this would ultimately lead to early white supremacists kind of getting to know each other in a good kind of, in a really togetherness kind of sense. They'll get to know each other very, very well. And this would ultimately lead to a little bit of an uptick, but not too much of popularity in the mid 2000s. So next slide, please.
Hold on, I'm working on it.
No, it's good. So after that, and with a gradual kind of sense of the internet kind of all coming together, a few years pass. 4chan and Meta are really the two sites that white supremacists tend to really focus on. 4chan especially because it is completely, almost all anonymous. Reddit really started to focus on getting people's, email and whatnot to actually create an account. So 4chan is really a place where you can go on and not worry about any kind of repercussions whatsoever. Most of these people with these ideas are actually between the ages of 25 and 40. Nothing that we really saw, or at least not as many people that we saw in the video we saw in Charlottesville earlier. So again, how did so many young people, especially, turn to these white supremacist ideas so quickly? The answer is kind of surprising, but also if you look back at a lot of we see in history, in internet trends in the 2010s, it's really not surprising what we see here. So by this time, a lot of white supremacists kind of noticed that we're kind of getting old here, and we're not going to be able to attract more young people to these ideas unless we do something about it. So that's at least what some of them were saying. A lot of them didn't really care, but a lot of them also wanted to get their ideas out, and they wanted it to spread. So in 2010, in the 2010s, one big site started to really, really pop up. Does anyone want to guess what it is? I'll give you a hint, it's a video sharing website.
YouTube.
YouTube, exactly. Next slide, please. So.
Hold on.
No, that's fine. Take your time. This is when we have to talk about the YouTube algorithm and with early YouTube. When YouTube first popped up in 2005, it wasn't really noticed until about the late 2000s and the early 2010s. That's when it really started to pop up with things like viral videos. I'm sure you remember things like Charlie bit my finger and it going crazy all over. We're Gangnam Style in 2013. That was mainly what YouTube was for. Viral videos going everywhere and everyone just happens to get on the site. And well, there's all kinds of stuff on YouTube. And a large number of these YouTube videos were actually for some called gaming videos, where people would watch other people playing a video game. And usually a lot of these things were something called first-person shooters, such as Call of Duty, because games like Call of Duty and whatnot attracted mainly a lot of white young men. So it was actually a perfect breeding ground for white supremacists, because they have basically a base to gang up and go to and basically say, hey, you're white, I'm white, we should talk to each other and see what we can do, And it gets worse because a lot of games like Call of Duty had a very, very, very toxic fan base. There's plenty of YouTube videos seeing in these video game lobbies of people screaming the N-word at each other and calling each other F slurs and C slurs and all kinds of awful, awful things. And people in these games were either really not nice or just didn't want to talk to people at all because they know that other people would just be toxic. And so because of that, they knew that they had people to really attach to in these kind of gaming communities. So at the same time, coincidentally, white supremacists started uploading their own kind of videos, whether that was actual complete white supremacist ideology or something a bit lighter than white supremacist ideology. Not necessarily white supremacy, but maybe something on what they considered a right-leaning idea. However, it wasn't something such as capitalism or anything like that, but it was rather anti-liberalism. That was the idea that they wanted to put forward to get people into falling into white supremacy. Rather than a pro-whatever, it was anti-this. So we can actually see this because, once you go to the next slide, please. You can see that they were very into anti-feminism, especially going into the 2013 and 2014 era. A lot of people, especially my age, actually remember this because we would go on to YouTube and we would find dozens of videos saying feminists destroyed or SJW destroyed with facts and logic, or social justice warrior destroyed with facts and logic, etc., etc., etc. And this is where we need to talk about the YouTube algorithm. The way that the YouTube algorithm works is that it sees that you watch videos of a certain type. And there are other videos that happen to be similar to those videos or have creators of those videos who are related to other creators of certain of similar videos. So they take videos that are similar to that and say, hey, you should watch these kinds of videos because this seems kind of interesting. Or we think you would like this. It's not something that was humanly done. It was all done by a computer, by a program. So it definitely led to a lot of problems, especially this, because it ultimately led from people watching things like a feminist melting down in front of a conservative speaker at a college, to people talking about, debunking feminist ideas, and to people calling women C-slurs and awful, awful things. And that would eventually lead to people watching multiple different kinds of white supremacists on YouTube, including people like Laura Southern and Milo Yiannopoulos, who either as alt-right figures or as white supremacist figures. Alt-right, by the way, is a rebranding of white supremacy and neo-Nazism and an infamous white supremacist known as Fletcher actually claims himself as alt-right. So I want to make that clear. They are not right-leaning, they are alt-right. There's very distinct difference here. So this is not a video, this is actually a picture, because the video itself was taken down. And this is a video by Laura Southern here. And this is called The Great Replacement. It was not made 4 days ago. This was back, I believe, in 2017 or 2018. So this had been going on for a while, from the 2013, 2014 into 2018, as much as 2019. Excuse me. And this video is called The Great Replacement. Does anyone remember one of the very infamous things said at Charlottesville by the neo-Nazis? What did they say about people replacing us? Jews will not replace us, right? So in white supremacist ideology, the idea is that, this is ridiculous, but just hear me out here, that Jews will replace white people with people who are Latino or Black or any other kind of minority that they see as subhuman. So she's not necessarily pushing this idea here, but she's talking about something called white genocide, which is a repercussion of us replacing white people with Jews replacing white people with people of color or other minorities, which is just ridiculous. But luckily this was taken down because people reported it and was able to get it down. But originally Laura Southern was seen as just a right-leaning figure because that's what she pushed herself to be seen as. And this is how she got so mainstream, because people unfortunately were not able to differentiate between far right and white supremacist. And that is a dangerous difference, especially on the internet, when there is so many things you have to see the difference between, especially with fake news sites or anything like that. It is extremely dangerous. So this led ultimately to a very large amount of people either falling into white supremacist circles and alt-right circles, or people becoming radicalized into white supremacy. And if you don't believe me, I will give you more proof. Next slide, please. Oh, excuse me, I forgot about something. Thank you. The thing that we just talked about with YouTube is actually called the AltRight Pipeline, which is basically taking someone from a certain, someone on YouTube and basically, whether that is through a direct pipeline. The pipeline is a bit of a misnomer because it's like a big web of people who create things online. And this is from The Atlantic. They did a really, really good article about this. But you can see here that there are multiple just normal right political YouTube channels, such as Ben Shapiro and Dennis Prager and whatnot. However, whether they knew it or not, they invited people who have a bit more radical views onto their shows, which ultimately have more connections to other people, so other people watch those videos, such as, if you see the one with the most connections, it's a YouTube channel by the name of Sargon of Akkad, which pushes things such as, women should be put back into traditional roles and not be given the right to vote, and black people should be sent back to Africa, and really awful views like that. And whether they meant to or not, they ultimately led people to find other people to end up at white supremacy. And that's not necessarily people on the right and they're talking in their political points, but it's also, it's more about the YouTube algorithm at the time that ultimately led them down this pipeline to white supremacy and neo-Nazis. This ultimately led to a direct increase of white supremacist recruitment, not only in organizations such as Patriot Front, which I'll talk about later, but also just informal people on the internet and people who just meet up in general to talk about this kind of thing. Anyway, now we know what they look like. And so if we really want to have an understanding here, this is the ADL heat map. It's a map of all kinds of different either hate crimes or white supremacist events or protests. I've made it focus specifically on white supremacy protests and events, as well as anti-Semitic hate crimes, 2014 and 2016. But we can imagine that based off of the statistical data from earlier and other ADL statistics at the time, that it was about, anti-Semitic incidents were about 200, 300 per year. Or not per year, between 2014 and 2016. And there were very few white supremacist events other than KKK rallies, which rarely happened. Let's go into 2017, which is the year that Charlottesville happened. In 1 year, we have 428 events of either anti-Semitic incidents, white supremacist propaganda, or white supremacist events. Now let's go into the next year. It jumps up to 1,214. This is about the end of this is really the end of the anti-SJW era, and really getting white supremacists actually out and open, and they're actually wanting to go out of the internet and recruit people out in the field. That's why you see so much more propaganda pop out, and you can see that in the blue dots here, especially in places like Chicago, New York City, LA, and San Francisco, Florida especially. You can even see it in Montana, which that's surprising me, honestly. But who lives there?
Clarifying question, when you say the end of the anti-SJW, you're saying they stop being against this thing and start being for
white supremacy.
Okay.
They outwardly support, they're really more supporting white supremacy than going anti-anything.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for clarifying that. Oh, making me clarify that. And we're gonna go one more year into 2019. And in 1 year, this is not any from any of the other years, this is in 1 year, 2019, including anti-Semitic incidents, white supremacist propaganda, and white supremacist events that includes protests. We had 2,724, over half of last year, increased. It was more than 150%. I think, I don't know that very well. But again, we can actually see a huge increase in New York City, and we can actually attest to this by a number of hate crimes that have actually spiked in New York City against observant and religious Orthodox Jews in Brooklyn specifically. There's actually a decrease in LA and an increase in other rural parts of California because they're now starting to understand the base. They know that we're white people who are disconnected from people of color and live in rural areas. So you have people in Utah, especially near Salt Lake City, in places like Texas, in Ohio, Illinois, and Minnesota, where people are not necessarily always in cities, where they're disconnected. This is a thing in psychology that talks about if you are usually with people of color or other people who are not like you, you become more tolerant of them. So they, again, although we have this funny idea from movies like Indiana Jones that they're stupid and don't know what they're doing, these people are smart. And we need to understand that. And people like Richard Spencer and other white supremacists that lead these things are actually college educated. And I hate to put it out like this, but they are smart, and sometimes they know exactly what they're doing. So, the ultimate question is well, next slide, please, Sam. Okay. How do we fight this? Because we have seen year after year that white supremacy and white supremacists in the United States and in America are increasing. Hate crimes are increasing both on the internet and in real life. TikTok, if you've ever heard of it, is again a somewhat similar to YouTube. Had an anti-Semitic spike of over 900% in the last month. So how do we fight this? Next slide, please. And I couldn't find a rabbi for this quote because there really wasn't a good quote. And also, I'm a lover of chess. So I had to pick something from the Art of War, which is, to know your enemy, you must become your enemy. Please do not become white supremacists. That is the last thing I want you to do. Please do not do that. But we have to be able to understand what they are thinking and understand their playbook and understand what they're doing in order for these things to spread so fast. Because if we don't understand that, we won't be able to get to the root of the problem. All right? Next slide, please. And we'll get to that video in a second. So some of the things that white supremacists do, like I said, a lot of white supremacists are smart. A lot of them really, really stupid. If you see white supremacy on any kind of social media, because we're going to be focusing on this first part about things we can do on the internet to notice white supremacy when we see it, and either take it down or get it recognized or whatever way we can. The best thing you can do if you see someone throwing slurs around is just report them, please, and block them and make sure people know don't interact with this guy. If they have personal information and if they go to a job, if you want to, feel free to call their job and say like, hey, I saw this guy was, saying stuff and I think you should talk to him about it. I wouldn't want someone, who is feeding me stuff at a restaurant to also be saying I should be killed. That's pretty awful in my opinion. Or again, Holocaust denial. Pretty sure we can all agree that's pretty bad stuff. Let's not, do that. But one thing that white supremacists, especially on the internet, love to do is to use dog whistles. So if we want to understand exactly what a dog whistle is, it's kind of a big question to ask, and I'm not the best at explaining it, so I'm going to let this YouTube video really explain it for me, because he does a lot better job than I ever could. So go on ahead when you're ready.
Okay, again, a little bit of...
Yeah, there will be a bit of technical powwow for a second here.
Okay, there's that. And
I'm Richard Wright.
okay, hold on, we got to go through an ad
I have
first.
a once-in-a-lifetime invitation for you. Would you like
We are having some technical difficulties. Please give us a moment.
Okay. Oh, hold on. Sorry, everyone. I had it set and then it disappeared. Okay. 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 So hopefully this will work for those who are watching on Zoom. If it doesn't work, we will eventually put out this onto YouTube, appropriately perhaps, and we will have the link in the description for this video. Okay.
I highly suggest you watch the whole thing. It's very well done.
Okay.
Few people will outright deny
that the Holocaust happened. There are those people, but they're easily debunked and dismissed, so they're not the ones I want to talk about. I want to talk about the people who secretly and sometimes openly wish that the Holocaust was more successful. It's usually a pretty hard sell to say something as brazen as the Holocaust was good. Most people are going to slowly back away from you if you say something like that. So you have to switch gears when trying to make your side look better by saying something like, it wasn't that bad. This is the first step in making your ideas more palatable to the average person and to get them to question if maybe things have been exaggerated. Most people are against wholesale genocide. Really? Talking about genocide again? It's only been like 2 months. So the apologists have to reframe the deaths as not the main goal, but just the side effect. Here's the Auschwitz wasn't that bad narrative in action.
Auschwitz had a nice orchestra. Auschwitz they had a pool, they had a gym, they had a symphony orchestra. I mean, like there's Mexicans in America that would kill for those living conditions. I mean, come on. Man, their clothes were pest free.
Now, a lot of that is actually true. They did have an orchestra and a soccer team and a swimming pool. But Auschwitz was a massive complex consisting of multiple camps with 3 major ones. One was a concentration camp for political prisoners, one was a factory labor camp, and the one that we all know, Auschwitz II-Birkenau, was the concentration and extermination camp. Guess which one didn't have any of those amenities? They also threw one in there that you probably didn't catch unless you're in the know.
Man, their clothes were pest free.
Is he talking about the normal delousing that prisoners go through? Of course not. The gas used in the mass execution of human beings at the concentration camps was Zyklon B, which was invented in the 1920s as an insecticide. This is a dog whistle to Holocaust deniers, suggesting that the mass amounts of the chemical located at the camps was used for pest control and not what we all know it was used for. So it's worth asking, what is a dog whistle? In real life, it's a whistle that you blow that nobody else looking at you will hear except for the intended target, usually a dog. So in listening to their little discussion, you probably didn't hear any Holocaust denial among all of their jokes. The Holocaust deniers did, and that's a dog whistle. There are literally so many dog whistles that people have made hours of content exposing and explaining them. I've even done a few of them in the first few minutes of this video just to show how easily they fly under the radar, including having that in the background.
So we get the point now. Dog whistles are something that go under our radar that basically signals to other white supremacists that, yeah, man, I'm in the know too. I understand what you're talking about here. So let's continue to the next slide. Let's see what he's saying. By the way, if you ever get a chance, I highly suggest you watch that whole video. It is very, very, very well done. So if we want to understand how we can notice dog whistles, well, we gotta know what the dog whistles are first. There's on the ADL, the Anti-Defamation League's website, there is tons of stuff about hate symbols and dog whistles that they talk about all over the place, including things like this, or what he did like this, which is not as often, this one's not as often done as usual by white supremacists, but we will see later that this is done very, very often by many of them. The first one you may see a lot on the internet by people who hold a certain type of viewpoint against certain people, white supremacists, is that they put certain words, in 3 parentheses. So these are called echoes. So if I were to say that, the reason that they do that is to imply that the word that is encircled by these parentheses are Jewish. So if I wanted to say, imply that this kid I know goes, not in some kind of anti-Semitic way here, this kid I know happens to go to a school, a public school. I would put, and this kid also happens to be Jewish. So if I were to imply that he was Jewish, I'd put the 3 parentheses around the word kid to say that this kid is also Jewish. The way that white supremacists use this is that they say, well, the people who run the banks are not very nice to us, or whatever way they also want to use it in. They don't have to use the word Jew to say that these people are Jewish. So 1488, this is sometimes seen in people's names on Twitter, so it's not their actual names, but name or user handles that they have. 1488 is reference to two different things. The first one is 14, which is a reference to the 14 words. I don't remember exactly how it goes, but something about preserving the white race from subhuman people, which is definitely not a good thing. And 88, if we were to put that into the alphabet from numbers, into the alphabet from numbers, that'd be HH, which is shorthand for Hail Hitler, which is not good, to say the least. Next one we go to is 109 or 110. This is, I don't even know how we got this number. I know how to get the second number, but the first one is supposedly how many countries the Jews have been expelled from, which is, I guess they're counting doubles or something because it's off. But sorry, I'm a big history nerd. But the 110 is referencing to if they are expelled from here, it would be 110 countries. So it's kind of a hopeful thing of get rid of us in some awful way. One you might have heard is globalists, which is, just kind of a buzzword or really to refer to Jews when I don't want to use the word Jews. Same thing with cultural Marxists, which I have no idea what that means anymore. We're going to go on to the top right side here. The Zionist occupied government. This one makes me laugh every time. No, it's not referring to Israel, surprisingly. It's referring to the American government. And again, the word Zionist is either used to reference that Jews care more about Israel than they do about this country. So they're going to take advantage of America to help Israel because wouldn't we just all move there? Like, I don't know. Another one here is these next two are some that mostly are used by white supremacist trolls, people who basically just get on people's nerves on the internet for, I guess, fun. Another Shoah, I hate saying that, is kind of trying to replicate the kind of Brooklyn Jewish accent saying, oh my gosh, if we don't do something, there's going to be another Shoah. I'm going to just stop explaining from there. I don't. Oy vey, again, is just making fun of Jews and saying that kind of stuff and whatnot. The Goyim No is also, again, referencing a couple things, actually. It's making fun of Jewish stereotypes and Jewish, the way Jewish people speak in Brooklyn specifically. But also, it's supposed to be kind of like if a white person catches a Jew saying something like, yeah, we control the government, catches a Jew saying that, and they say, oh my gosh, the Goyim No, shut it down, as if the Jews have to shut down what either these other Jewish people or these these non-Jewish people are doing because we control what they say, right? Anyway, the last one that I really want to talk about is this. We have all done this sometime in our lives, and we've probably seen this on the news plenty of times, because there's this huge thing when the ADL said that this was a hate symbol. And if you actually read what the ADL wrote on its website, putting this up in the air is perfectly fine unless you are doing it to signal it to other white supremacists. So you're like, yeah, I'm okay, that's fine. Just don't be like, yeah, dude, Hail Hitler. Don't do that, please. That's not a good idea. So anyway, what we're going to do now is we're going to try and recognize some of these dogmas. And some of these are a bit, I've got, I think, 4 easy ones and one a bit more difficult. So we'll go on to the next slide. So we're going to start with the top left one here. Oh, the top of this is hard to read. But we can start with the top left one here. Again, we just talked about the OK symbol. Is that photo is actually from Charlottesville. And that is a white supremacist holding up that OK sign. And to give you a better idea of what this means, we can see here in my hands WP, as in white power. So that clears it up for any of you. That's kind of the.
But he's doing it backwards.
Oh, because it's a photo. It's reflecting.
Oh.
Yeah. The second one here. Does anyone Does anyone, if you can read it, I'll read it for you. It says, the Goyim mill shut down. Does anyone recognize that photo, if you can see it at the top? So that photo is actually from 1930s German propaganda. And the person on the right is a very large man with a large nose and a top hat, basically trying to seduce an unwanted German woman. I'm sure you can see what this is all about. At the far right, no pun intended, sorry. On the top right photo here, this is actually a response to a person named Nick Fuentes. Nick Fuentes is a online, very, very popular Generation Z white supremacist. His stream is a lot on Holocaust denial and bigotry and very white supremacist, very much white supremacist talking points. So this is a meme format that has been used. If you know what a meme is, wonderful. This is a meme format that's been used hundreds of times by all kinds of different people. But on the left here, you see normal right-wing channels or establishments, such as the Republican Party, Young Americans for Freedom, Daily Wire, Turning Point USA, things that are supposed to, either bring young students in to, get into right-wing politics, or just support right-wing politics. I don't know who the woman is. I think it was just someone who was talking, Nick, who was also happened to be right-wing, and unfortunately, I think Nick actually radicalized. It looks like I think with the original tweet. But if you see the three letters there, she's saying, wait, this is all ZOG, which is Zionist Occupied Government. So as to say that the Jews control all of that right-wing things like the Republican Party and Turning Point USA. So they can't get rid of the real problem, which is those things which is controlled by the Jews, because the Jews are controlling it. And it's very convoluted, so I am very sorry. And Nick Fuentes is holding a gun to her and saying it's always has been. So that is a very, actually, good way to see how dog whistles are used here. At the bottom right here, this is also, not really a dog whistle, but it's very well said, and I just couldn't find a better one on Twitter. Thank God I'm off that site. It says, anyone wonder why Jews have been kicked out of 109 countries? I mean, at least they're to the point this time, right? They're not dancing around it anymore. So the last one here is on the very bottom, and I try to make this as big as possible. I hope most of you can read it. Can you all read that? Here and okay. So to give you context, the original tweet that this is referring to is basically just is a news network talking about a study that found a correlation between having a vegan or vegetarian diet and not getting COVID or getting less COVID severity symptoms while you get COVID. So if you want to read this tweet, and maybe you can try and, we'll play a game, we'll spot the dog whistle. So I'll give you 30 seconds and we'll see what you can find. Okay, then I won't read it to you. All the woke narratives coalesce into one Gaia religion, which is, okay. I half expect the Pope to tell us we won't go to heaven if we eat meat. Like Hollywood and media, the Vatican is now one of the globalist social influence tools after all. That's it.
So is he saying that the Vatican is controlled by the Jews?
Yes.
Got that right. I wish they did that before, all that stuff happened during the entirety of the Crusades, but
Inquisition.
It could be nice, but we can't have everything now, can we? So now that we're able to understand and see where they can actually use these dog whistles, how can we actually do something about it in our communities, both in person and online? So let's go on to the next slide, please. So I've come up with 3 different A's. 2 of them kind of fit together in a way, but of ways to spot white supremacy and also be active in the community. Let's start with the first one here. The first A is to be alert. Be on your toes and be ready to notice or anything dangerous or anything related that is to white supremacy. And in order to be alert, you have to be aware. You have to keep yourself really in the know about what white supremacists are doing to hook people into their ideology, whether that is about posting things on the internet or putting propaganda on college campuses or whatever they might be doing in your area. And there's plenty of ways to find this. They're usually on the news, or there's people talking about it. And if you go on the internet, they talk about internet forums that talk about anti-white supremacy and anti-neo-Nazism and whatnot. And there's plenty of people who meet up in real life and say, hey, I saw this and I don't really know what to do about it. And this goes into the last point. If you see something, tell others what you know and find communities who alert others to white supremacist actions. There are plenty of people who are willing to say, hey, I can do something to help you, and I know people who can help you if, Baruch Hashem, there are white supremacists in your area. There are plenty of people who are willing to help you, your neighbors, your family, and your friends. There are plenty of people who are willing to help you. It is these three things together that ultimately can help us hopefully make white supremacy not as much a problem as it used to be. So next slide, please. So if we're gonna talk about that, we have to know about our safety, especially today. Gotcha, thank you. Especially if we're gonna, the first thing about online, especially, should just be pretty obvious, do not engage them. Do not engage with online white supremacists, because it will end badly in many cases. I used to do this. It didn't end well for me. I got death threats. I got lots of death threats online, and I was not a fan. So please don't do that. Some people I know got doxxed, which means that their personal and private information was put out on the internet. That means their address. Some people got their social security numbers leaked, and their credit card information leaked somehow. So sometimes these people really mean business, and they will do all kinds of things to harm you and your reputation. So do not engage, report and block and leave it be. If you do see white supremacy in real life here, whether that is in specifically propaganda, first thing you should do is report it, whether that is to an anti-hate group, or I highly recommend the JCRC here in Cincinnati. If you live in elsewhere, you can report it to your local ADL or the local JCRC. If you really want to, you can contact the police. I don't know if they do much about it. I haven't really done much with them. If you see white supremacists, whether that is they're just doing whatever, usually they're not very easy to spot, but if, God forbid, you see someone with a big swastika on their chest, do not engage them, just don't. If you know if there's a white supremacist moving to your local area, contact your community. Tell them, hey, there's someone who holds very unfavorable views about me or people who I know and love. Please know that this person lives here, because please don't engage them, because this person could be dangerous and we don't know. If you know or hear about something in terms of white supremacists planning something, whether that's a violent or non-violent protest, or Baruch Hashem, a bombing of a synagogue, or any other kind of violent thing. I remember in 2018, I believe there was a spike in synagogues and JCCs getting threats from getting bomb threats from white supremacists. Contact the police first, because they will know what to do. If it's a violent thing, contact the police. If it's non-violent, contact, again, the ADL, the JCRC, or any kind of anti-hate organization in your area. Luckily, white supremacy in terms of protests and being outward here in Cincinnati is not much of a problem outside of things such as propaganda, which sometimes is put out, such as stickers, which you can actually see here, which is where I talk about Patriot Front really quick, because I'm basically out of time. So you can see all this is Patriot Fund, they're the largest white supremacist organization in America. And they have things such as the 14 words here, the Goyim no, dog whistles like that. Some of them are hard to see, and I apologize about that. I thought that this would be bigger, but that was on me. And recently, they, as soon as January, February, and March, they have put propaganda on NKU, and they actually vandalized a part of Xavier University and put propaganda at NKU and Xavier University, and put propaganda even on UC. If you want to, this is up to you, and I actually suggest you do this, scratch the stickers off. Because the sooner they're off, the less likely people are going to join into the organizations. The only way we cannot fight white supremacists with weapons, because let's not do that, at least try and keep us pacifists, please. What we can do is stop them from spreading their information, stop spreading their hate. And while they think they control the internet, they don't, because we have the beautiful power of the report button. And in real life, we have keys, and we have keys to scratch off those stickers. We have ways to shut down the protests, and we have ways to warn others before they strike. So please be safe and do what you can. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Fletcher. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Fletcher, for leading us today. I want to see if there are any questions, either in person or, I know it was hard to hear a little bit on Zoom, but if there is anything that you would like clarified or any questions.
Anything at all, feel free.
All right, the term AltRight. Is alternate? What's alt?
Alternative.
Yeah, alternative. So they claim themselves to be like an alternative branch of the right wing. But in reality, they're just saying that to basically get more people hooked on to white supremacists, to neo-Nazis, or whatnot.
Well,
yeah, great question.
And there's also there's something of a subtle code. The phrase itself is a dog whistle. Because what they're effectively saying is the mainstream right has been compromised by the Zionists. And this is an alternative to that.
Great question. Laura.
So this really isn't a question, but it's the same thing. Really surprised me. About a year ago, I was on Amazon, like we all are every day, and searching, I don't remember what for a book, but like self-published book popped up that was clearly a restatement of the Jews are taking over the world kind of Zionist view.
Protocols of
Zion, thank you. Not thinking of the term. But I actually called the JCRC and they got in contact with the ADL, and within a couple of days it was on the Amazon website. And it's surprising how much is out there when you start to see it, but also how effective these wonderful organizations are.
Yes, and to reiterate on that, you can let my screensaver read that on, by the way. To reiterate on that, the people like the JCRC and the ADL, they are not going to make a news flash out of whatever happened to you. Trust me, I've worked with them when I've done stuff with them.
Nope. Sorry, everyone.
That's not better. That's a lot more lovely to look at. They will not make a news flash or anything about what you experience. They will work with you and to make sure, and work with others to make sure that whatever has happened is either taken down or taken care of. Does have any more questions or comments or concerns?
I think we're good.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate it.